Okay, well, let's start a little bit. I'm sure Kaiba-san will join us at some point, but and I guess Uli is about cool.
Yeah.
They want to get more time.
Okay. I mean, the point is basically I want us all to make sure that we're kind of on the same page, understanding of where the church is headed, because I do think that fairly significant changes are coming, and maybe sooner than later. And I'm really excited about it. I think Johnny and brother Eliezer and Shinji-san are sharing an excitement about the things that God could do through these new changes. So as we head into these changes, it's important for us to understand that whenever there is change, there's also a lot of resistance, and there's also a lot of opportunity for misunderstanding and for people to get hurt and that sort of thing. And that would be, I mean, that's absolutely what the devil wants, right? He wants to stop this change from happening. So it's going to be good for us to make sure that we communicate, right? That we understand each other as well as possible, so that we can support this thing that God is doing. It's not something that Johnny's doing or that I'm doing, that Pastor Shinji's doing. It's what we feel that God is doing in this place. So we want to be on the same page. I do want to make sure that it's done, that I do have permission from Brother Eliezer and from Pastor Shinji and Johnny to be able to share this with you today, even though Pastor Shinji is not here. I have received their permission. So with that being said, let me just remind you that at the beginning of the year, in my message in February, I announced that these changes will come. I announced that we were starting to see some vision, right? Some new vision, different than what we had before. A new vision that still implements aspects of the vision that we've always had, right? But also introduced a lot of new things. It's the next step for this church. And the past few years, I've been working with this church now for 12, 13 years, very, very closely for the past a little bit over 5 years, and felt the Lord slowly speaking different things to me about this church. And last December, I felt really strongly that the Lord was telling me it was time for us to start going just from ideas and what we're hearing to actually action and making real changes. And so I brought these changes. I talked with Johnny, I talked with Pastor Shinji, talked with Brother Eliezer, and there was a lot of agreement. And so in February, I made the announcement to the church. Was everybody here for that announcement? Okay. Just to put it quickly, since everybody was here, and for anybody that's watching on the recorded, yeah. I think you should have been there. You might have been there in the The Lord spoke to my heart 3 ways that the church needed to change. Not because what we were doing was bad. What we were doing was wonderful. What we're doing now is beautiful. It's been so incredible to be a part of it. But that the Lord has just prepared something new for us, right? And that was what the conference that we just had was the Lord doing a new thing. And so in order for this new thing to happen, 3 key changes needed to be made in the church. The first was a change in focus, or a change in vision. Not completely throwing away the old, but we're making an adjustment. We're moving in a slightly different direction. Okay. And then once we had that vision, to find a location that more closely fit with the vision, and also with the gifts and the talents and the people that we have here. So when this church first started, it was a very, very different group of people. The Kimmeras have been a constant, but the rest of us people have come and gone, and now it feels like a very different group than it did before. And so for the people that we have now, the people that are here now that God's brought here, have different giftings and different skills and different callings. And so for us to find a place and a vision that fits together with what the people here are called and equipped to be able to do is really going to be crucial for this church heading into the next step. Okay. Along with that, a change in leadership. And again, this is not us tossing out the old, right? We're not kicking Pastor Shinji out the door. Not at all, right? What I meant by this was an expansion of leadership. So for so long, Pastor Shinji and Kaiwa-san have carried this church for basically on their own, right? They've had some people come beside them and help. Obviously, the whole Kimura family has invested so much. But to have people established in different roles to function more like the body, more like the picture that God gave to us in His Word about how a body functions together. People set in different places to do different things. Okay, that we would be able to achieve more of that kind of an image of a church, and we've already begun with that. So that was one of the reasons why we established just recently Jason as a deacon, and why it was announced that Johnny and I would be joining the fivefold ministry here. Okay. Everybody was here for that as well, right? Okay. I do want to touch on that though, because I feel like this is maybe one of the most important things. When it was announced that Johnny and I are going to be part of the fivefold ministry, I spoke with some people and felt like there was a little bit of confusion about what that actually meant. And that's okay, because even we were not really 100% sure what it meant.
We had to figure it out together to ask the right question.
Right. We've been talking with Pastor Shinju, we've been talking with Brother Eliezer, making sure that we're completely clear so that we don't, step on each other's feet and that there's no, division between us. And I think we've got it pretty clear. But the reason why this happens is because, the body of Christ is so diverse, right? There's so many different denominations, people come from different spiritual backgrounds, and every church has a different way of categorizing or using terminology for the roles in the church. So I wanted to explain this to make sure that not just us and Pastor Shinji and Brother Eliezer, because I feel like we're in unity, but that everybody else here was able to understand clearly what we're going to be doing in the church. Because one of the questions was, if us just joining the fivefold ministry team, then that doesn't really sound like a big change. And I think it actually is. And I want to make sure that that's clear today. Okay, so that being said, oops, second. In order to explain what our role is going to be in the church going forward, let me start off by giving an analogy. I'm going to speak in a parable like Jesus did. Okay. Imagine if you were a member of a sports gym. You pay monthly, right? You receive a membership card, and you can use that card to go into that gym and use those facilities however you like. You have the permission, the authority to be able to use that gym and all of the things inside of it. But just because I have a membership card to this gym doesn't mean that I'm allowed to go into another gym and use those same facilities. If I were to take this card and go to a different gym and try to enter, what would happen? I would not be allowed to enter. I would not be allowed to have permission to use the equipment, to use the facilities, right? Okay. So what I mean by this is that until now, right, okay, Johnny and I, we are both pastors in our own ministries. God has anointed us. We've had authority in our own ministries to pastor people, to disciple people, to operate as, well, I feel I would be a pastor teacher. I think Johnny would maybe be pastor evangelist. The terms are not so important, but those are just the unique callings and giftings that God's put on us. But until now, when we come here to this church, even though we love this church, great relationship with this church, our roles change, right? We become more advisors here. Okay? We are respected individuals, but we don't carry the same authority. We don't have a card that allows us with the same authority to lead the church in the way that Pastor Shinji. That's not a bad thing. That's to protect the church. Okay? But what it means when we join the fivefold ministry team, okay, what it means is that now we've got a new kind of membership card. One that works whether we're at our own gym or churches or when we come here, right? So that when Johnny is at his ministry in Christobashi, he's a pastor. When he comes here, he still has the same authority as a pastor. Right? Same for me. Okay? So what this basically means is that now, and it's a wonderful thing, this church essentially has 3 pastors, right? We are co-pastors, as many other churches would call it. Okay? The fivefold ministry, okay, terms are the terms that are used in 7 Key Truth churches. Okay, and so we'll respect those terms while we're here. But for those of us who come from diverse church backgrounds, just to make it more simple to understand, right? We are basically acting as co-pastors here now. So that means that we have the authority to disciple the people here, right? To give instruction into your life, to mentor you, to lead and guide the church as a whole, to receive vision from the Lord and share it with the church, and then be able to execute that those steps in order to make that happen, right? So now we have the membership card, which gives us the authority to do that. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Is that clear enough? Okay.
Hey, John, can I add?
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time talking with Laser, Pastor Shinji, about like, what are we actually able to do that is different, other than just because he's been ordained as a pastor, I've been ordained as a pastor. They acknowledged that, but we didn't really understand what it meant until fairly recently, where we wanted it to be crystal clear. So I would say we want it to be crystal clear to everybody else too,
Right.
because there is a reason we weren't ordained as pastors here. And I think that's important to know.
Yeah.
Because the way 7 Key Truths works is different, and we respect their process, but they still wanted to give us some authority because of just the natural investment in relationships that we carry. Is that kind of
Yeah. Mhm.
But that is
Right.
that was like our big question was, okay, the decision is we're not going to be ordained here, but there is going to be a change.
Yeah.
Back then.
Exactly. And that's how Brother Eliezer described it to me, was that he didn't exactly use the membership card analogy, but in a similar way, we don't need to be ordained here because we've already been ordained. What they're doing is now they are recognizing that we have been ordained in other places. And just like this membership card analogy, you can still operate in that same authority when you come here. They're giving us permission to still be in that role as pastors and teachers and evangelists when we come here. Okay? And of course, it's going to be up to us to work together to maintain clear communication and unity so that we don't, step on each other's toes or have division. That's not our heart. It's our heart to work all of us together with Brother Eliezer kind of the authority over us and the covering, the umbrella over us, to give us counsel when there are moments where maybe we might have a different idea, but we're going to work hard to maintain unity and show the beauty of what it can be when you've got people from totally different backgrounds. I thought it was so interesting. It's totally my thinking, but as we were going through this whole process, when we were talking about the roles that we were going to play, because of my background, I was calling us overseers. I said, we're going to be overseers. And then when I talked to Johnny, he would say, oh, we're going to be elders, because that's the terminology he would use. And then when we talked with Pastor Shinji, he said apostle. And then when we talked to Brother Eliezer, he said part of the fivefold ministry. And everybody knew our words for it. But I thought that's a beautiful thing once we learn to speak each other's language. But it shows the diversity that God is weaving together here. A place where we accept each other despite our different backgrounds. And I personally want that to be like, I feel like the theme, the main characteristic of this church is that we are, I know it's kind of a sensitive word these days, but like a rainbow of different people from different nations, from different backgrounds, all loving each other and all working together. Okay. So that's my desire. As I said, we're going to be really seeking the Lord together on specific details about the next step, and then getting more people involved in that. So please be praying for us. Please be looking forward to let the Lord speak to you. Maybe the Lord might want to show you something about the next step. your role possibly in the next step, so that we can start building a church that is not. It's the church that it's not like this was not a good church, but to build something that fits what God desires for the next step of this church. Is that clear?
Some questions?
Yes. So I'm pretty much done talking. So I want to open it up for questions, and then Johnny can answer. I can answer.
I think all of the members of this church know that you are good ministers, but I don't understand fully about when you say that you are like okay. If somebody asked me that John and Johnny, are they one of the pastors of this church? I thought, yeah, answer. Yes, they are our members, and they are one of our pastors. Or I should say, they are not a real member of this church, but they are cooperating pastors
Right.
because they have their own church. Yeah, but our pastor and these three pastors are helping each other. Maybe I will ask at this moment. I will answer to the people.
If I was you, I would say it's like the book of Acts. At the church, Corinth, Ephesians, right? And there were people leading that church, but there was a strong relationship together because they all considered themselves part of, we're all believers. It wasn't, oh, you have to be in Ephesus to be a member of the church of Ephesus. And Paul was writing letters, corresponding, because the relationship was strong. So we're not coming every Sunday and maybe even tithing, but we have invested years and years of our life. So in a spiritual sense, I would say we are members, but not like, it's not a legal thing. I know here in Japan, it's membership needs to be crystal clear. But what Elazer was saying to us is we are functioning in a strong relationship. And it's very unique here in Japan. But I would say it resembles what the early church was actually like. But we are not like, but it's, as far as like position of authority, it comes from Elazer and the 7 key truths. Like, we basically go to them for advice. So in a sense, they're our covering, and that's why we're brought into that. What would be your answer?
No, it is a little bit of a unique setup. But the way that Brother Eliezer has explained it to us is that because we are ministering in other places, those are our number one responsibilities. So when we come here, this is never going to be our number one responsibility, right? Pastor Shinji has dedicated himself that this is his number one responsibility. So he's obviously, even though we share the same pastoral authority, he's still going to carry more of the actual responsibility, the actual investment. We're coming in almost like part-time ministers. But when we are here, we still carry the same pastoral authority as messages. This is what Brother Eliezer explained to me. He's given us the freedom, is basically what it is. He's given us the freedom to say, yes, you can still, like this, right? I have a card for this gym. And if I come here, my card is not going to suddenly change to this card, right, of this gym. I can just still use that card here. It's basically what it's.
maybe I could understand. 70 or 80%.
Well, that's how we
I
felt at first as well, so, you know.
We are members in that sense.
We're members of the same body, right? We're members of the same, and we're wanting to build a kind of a fellowship, not a denomination, not exclusive, but a fellowship of churches that work together. You know, my ultimate dream is to be able to really invest more in Mutanga and for people from Mutanga to be able to visit here anytime, helping ministry here. And for, you know, for them to go to Johnny's church and help, and he could send people to our church and then visit, fellowship with us and stay with here. And not being so, I'm gonna say, you know, worrying about who belongs where. We're all in the same body. We're all gonna be working together.
I would say it's also biblical when you look at Israel, because you have the different tribes. And they had different leaders in those tribes, but they would come together because they were all intentional. So, yeah, I have my group, I'm the New York group that you're meeting. But we come here often because we know that this place is a place that feels like home for us. And it's because of everybody here. Even if the people at Loamy move to another location, we will feel at home because it's the people. And I think it's very unique and different for Japan, but I actually think that's what makes this church so special. Is because so many people from other nations are coming here with different theology, but why are we all together? And yeah, I would say like that's a good way to look at it too, is like when they had the Israelites and they needed to divide them up and have leaders, but they all had one focus, which was they're bringing people closer to God. And there were differences within those tribes as well, but that's not a means to create division. And I think that's kind of
That's-
Lazar's point too, is
Right.
we have strong unity. And same with Shinji-san, like he respects us, he calls us and asks us advice, we give our opinions, and then he takes it to later and like we kind of even figured out what his decision-making process looks like moving ahead. But it really is us under, we're not just suggesting things and there's some ideas that Laser has said, like, I want you guys to, yeah, if Shinji says couldn't do it, then we do it. But it doesn't, you know, because that's a whole other side of this is we want the church to start moving ahead with what God has for it. And I think everybody's in agreement to that. Even the also team that came here, that I think they're seeing the same thing, but there does need to be unity first before we take that big step. And I think that's why we want to, you know, take the time to really make sure everybody's on the same page. Because we were curious, and I think it would, you know, need to be written out somehow, just so people have something to, yeah, this is the vision and the direction we're headed. Because then it's something that we all can say yes to, you know, because it's hard to say yes to something when you don't know really what it is. But at the end of the day, we were like, yeah, we're here to serve. And yeah, it wasn't so much like, oh, we have to come here every single week and things like that. Is how do we actually expand into the city of Tokyo as a massive city and accept change together, because it affects everything. Any change that happens.
Yeah. And I want to make it clear that it's like our intention is not to take away the authority from Pastor Shinji, but to help him carry the burden, right? So that for any person, even me in my ministry, sometimes I feel like, oh God, what's the direction you want me to take this year? Or what's the vision for this year? I'm seeking, and it's difficult for me to really hear. And all of those decisions and
discipling all the members and all of that, it can be overwhelming sometimes, to be honest. Even as pastors, we are limited. And so this church has always relied on Pastor Steve to carry weight. That what we're saying is here, let's split it up a little bit so that you're free to do the things you really want to do, right? And you can give us some of the responsibility, and we're going to respect the uniqueness of this church. For example, the 7 key truths, right? So we don't have the power to say, oh, well, now that we're pastoral authority here, we're gonna change this and change this and change this. No, everything that we feel or hear the Lord speaking, we take that to Pastor Shinny, make sure that he's in agreement. And then if he is, then we take it to Brother Eliezer, make sure that he's in agreement. There's a system in place that is going to protect this church from losing its identity. We're not losing the identity, we're just moving it to the next step. For example, for these 3 things, as we talked about it, all of us felt a peace about that. Brother Eliezer told us when we had to meet, we had several meetings with him. He said, I've been praying for this to happen for years. And these changes are too much for one person to lead. It's going to take all of us working together in order for this change to happen smoothly. So we're going to rely on each other and trust each other going forward.
Yeah, but even the apostolic group, they had concerns like, well, are you gonna take people over to your church and like, they have no intention of doing anything like that. And it's almost better that we're separated because we have our focus, but he didn't want us coming in and, well, we're gonna change everything. Well, we don't have any desire to do that because we already have our things that have been here prior to really doing this. All we really are trying to do is really build this church, up to be the best it can. It doesn't necessarily have to be numbers. It has to be like John is saying, like that it has a purpose and a vision to where like this building has housed people from all over the world, and that's great. But if there's a change in the location, it really will take on a new form, whether that means nationals or the people in the neighborhood or even age. Like those are things that will change, I think, when the location changes. So it's important to really be in unity as we pray, especially with confusion. We don't want any more confusion to like, let's find out what it is, say the same thing over and over, and each time we're together to make steps towards what that actual that goal is. And then when you reach that goal, then you ask the Lord for what's next. And it's kind of like the verse in the Bible where it says to expand the tent. Like, and I do think that's what we need because it's unique and it's special. And we have strong relationships, which a lot of the churches that I visit here in Japan, it's not that strong as far as relationships. But I think everybody can feel stuck, but I think it's actually very special that the people that are here because, you don't need that many people to start something building. And you just need the people that are in agreement, like this is what we're going to do. So I would say that would be my goal, is to create a deep sense of unity so we make a big leap together. Because I think we all want that. We don't want to be like, what's gonna happen next? Like that doesn't feel good to not know like what's going to be ahead. But that's kind of like, I think our heart is, to kind of, if you think of a shepherd, there's a group of people and you guide the sheep to different places and avoid certain, like a cliff or something. In a pastoral sense, is we're gonna be guiding, you don't wanna control anybody. But I truly believe that everybody in this room is supposed to lead in some way, shape. And, yeah, Jesus started with 12 and a lot can happen. I think it really comes down to the heart that we have for one another. Because the location won't matter if we don't make our hearts for one another very strong. Because that's everything that I felt from this church. I've only felt love. Only that. And even with John, he's become a very close friend over the years. And people joke. You see, he's like the Asian version of me. But not exactly. But but it's funny because when I was in California, sometimes people would come and they message me and ask me questions. They're like, "Oh yeah, John told me the exact same thing." It's like, man, like I'm so glad I'm in unity with John, but he lives like on the other side of the planet. But now,
Talking to each other.
yeah, now we're close and we can really, grow our relationship to be something that'll, bless the people of Japan. And yeah, I'm very excited for what's ahead, but only at the pace of how strong our relationships. Nothing will happen if our relationships aren't strong.
Often. What do you think you need to say? Passing, so not the big
Nothing's been said.
Okay.
No more than what's already been.
Okay.
Yeah, there's still stuff we definitely have to iron out. I have had some conversations about that, because even I am now, considering I'm into a new season in my life as well, where I just feel strongly that the Lord is telling me to focus a little bit more again on our meet up ministry, which means that just like Johnny, I'm not going to be here every week in the future, probably. I might be here 3 weeks, 2 weeks, but probably not every week in the future. But when I'm here, I'm going to be just as invested, just like Johnny. And so this church is going to go through some change, and that can be scary. Change can be really scary. But we want to stay sensitive to the Holy Spirit. Just like the word we received during the conference, God is doing a new thing, and it's beautiful. And when He puts new wine into that new wineskin, right, it stretches, and that can be uncomfortable sometimes. But it's unto a good thing. It's unto a good thing. So we're going to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit. Let Him lead us. We're not going to force anything to happen. We're not going to say, okay, now that it's decided, we're going to move the church next week. No. We're going to be sensitive to everything that's going on here. Make sure that all of us are ready for changes before they happen. And I invite any of you, if you have questions or concerns, you can talk to us at any time. Because we're not controllers. Right? We want to do this together. We value all of them. So please come to us. Anything else?
So last thing, anybody's gonna say was.
It was about something kind of unrelated to this.
I know that you mentioned the decision you can process a little bit. But as far as things like moving the location, we want Pastor Shimmy to be 100% involved in it. We're not going to just make decisions. But it's also, there's there's an actual decision-making process.
Yeah,
That things don't just get lost.
Right.
And then, because that's what we don't want things to get stuck. That there, everybody feels that. There's something to be excited about, and even the potential of doing Bible studies with other people that you guys know, your friends, like who knows what God to, but it really is. We're all gonna, it's not just our relationship. I think what it really means is we are gonna, grow through this. And that's kind of, I think, what I'm remembering later. His overall attitude to this is excited, which I think is really good.
Yeah.
Because if he wasn't, oh yeah, but it's different. Over the last few years, it definitely feels like there's something unique about what's been happening. Yeah.
yeah, no, Eliezer told me multiple times, he told us multiple times that this is, in his opinion, right, this is exactly what he's been praying for years now to happen. And it's just the timing, it's a good timing from the Lord, and, recently my children had their Indo pie, right? When they have that race, what is it, three-legged race, and they're tied up. And it can be awkward sometimes working together. And, so at the beginning, there might be some awkwardness with us learning to work together, to learn to work in this new system. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Right? We are going to be growing together. And ultimately, it's going to lead to something really, really incredible. Everybody's kind of like somber right now, it seems, but we are really excited about it. I think all of us can be.
I also think questions are really good to ask us along the way. Because if we don't really have a solid answer, like we will try to find out what that answer is. Like maybe you don't have a question now, but down the line. Open communication is really gonna help us. And help everybody here, because you don't want to hold back something that you're kind of wondering or unsure of. And yeah, we might not have the answer, but we are committed to finding the answer and what it is. Because that is how we move together, how we move forward. Just to create deeper unity, I think that we value everybody's thoughts. And that is very true.
Next question. Let's talk about the excitement of changing the location. Yeah. And that there is sort of like a general agreement around that. I was wondering if there was any possibility if maybe there was like a place, even if it was just one time renting, like kind of in the area. To see like what it was like to maybe do like a service there on a Sunday, if that's something. You guys have
Near
thought.
where the Kimmeras live?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
kind of near their area.
Yeah.
Kind of like the areas you guys were talking about renting.
Right.
Like, if that was something they thought about doing, just to see what a Sunday looked like, kind of look. Because if the heart is there, I guess is why I'm asking. It's like, oh, like we feel like God is telling us to change locations. So like, what does it look like to do that? Just curious if that was something.
Yeah.
Thought about trying.
It's something that we have talked about a couple times, that we might, go to like once a month or two times a month in a different place. For there to be a transition period where like not everything gets changed at once, right? Or even for a time that we might even have like two services, right? Where we would still have like Pastor Shinji would lead here, so that if we had a visitor or something, somebody just comes up and that they'd be here. And then one of us would go to the new location and start there. So that was like an easier transition. So these are all things that we're talking about. But it's great, that you're saying that. And that, just like Johnny said, ideas like that are gonna help us, and questions like that, to say, oh, maybe those are things that we didn't even think about yet. And, so we want everybody to be a part of it. Sure. Because I've been in churches, where it's like the pastor there has a way he wants to do things and people go along with it or they don't. They leave, you can't say anything about it. That's just how it is. That's not what we want to build. We want to build a church where every person's value feels like they have a contribution and ability to say, hey, I think we should do it like this. Maybe we should adjust this. And listen. Say, okay, let's build that. This is not our church. It's not Pastor Sheets' church. It's everyone's church.
I just want to say, I really encouraged by some of John said, we'll talk about moving in the case of relationship. I think that's a very, even outside of specifically the changes of what's going on with church, I think that's just a very healthy outlook on all of this. So yeah, I really like to end up raising personally a lot of things for anything for future. I think.
All right. Yes, have any questions? And we don't go ahead and close.